Good morning and welcome to Great Tree Zen Women's Temple Saturday morning lecture series. This morning our talk is called Jukai-e, a participant's perspective. And right now we'd like to ask Teijo to do the opening sutra.
An unsurpassed, penetrating and perfect Dharma is rarely met with even in 100,000 million kalpas. Having it to see and listen to, remember and accept, I vow to taste the truth of the Tathagata's teaching.
And now I'll read a brief statement on dana. In Buddhism, when Zen practitioners share their understanding of the teachings and practice, it is offered freely as a practice of dana paramita. Dana is a Pali word that means generosity, or to give freely, and this practice is done without expectation of getting something in return. This is the spirit of speaking about the Dharma. Other ways to practice dana is to offer support to those who share the teachings, to support places of spiritual practice, and to give without judgment or expectation when opportunity arises. Those who share the teachings at Great Tree do so on a dana basis. Please support their practice by giving what you can. And is this morning's dana to go to Great Tree?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm omitting someone there. So you can go on to Great Tree's website and follow their donation path. This morning our speaker is Genjo Williams, who is one of our own. Has been studying and practicing Zen Buddhism since 2011 and received the 16 Bodhisattva Precepts in 2020 and again in 2022 from Reverend Teijo Munnich and Akiba Roshi, respectively. Tre completed his 200-hour yoga teachers training in 2012 and with Kristine Kaoverii Weber at Asheville Community Yoga. He is currently working on his master's in clinical mental health counseling at Lenoir-Rhyne University. Tre is interested in exploring the intersection of spirituality, mental health, and activism. Welcome, Tre.
Good morning. Thank you. It's funny being on the other side. Usually I'm like reading the dana statement and whatnot. It's a different experience. But yeah, thank you for the introduction and for the invitation to do this talk. It's really exciting to be here, sharing about the opportunity, sharing about the amazing experience out in LA at Zen Shuji, participating in the Jukai-e with Teijo and with Brooke and lots of others. So it's cool to be bringing that experience back to the Sangha and sharing it. It was really wonderful. So yeah, I'm going to talk about kind of Jukai in general. I know there are people here with differing experiences of Buddhism and all different levels of practice. And so I'm going to do my best to break down some of the terms and practices according to my understanding at this point in time, and talk specifically about the Jukai experience out in LA. It was a special Jukai, which I'll go more into Jukai and what that means. But it was a celebration of 100 years of Soto Zen Buddhism being established in North America. And so it's kind of like a big 100-year birthday party is how I've been kind of looking at it. And it felt like that. It was very celebratory and very special. And yeah, it was really great. And I'll go into it. So I wrote down some notes to kind of focus myself, because I have a tendency to ramble and go on tangents, and I'll do that anyway, probably. And I wrote down some notes according to like what makes sense in my head. So I don't know if it'll make sense to everyone else, but I'm gonna make sure to leave some time at the end for some discussion and questions and thoughts. So hopefully at least 15 minutes. I'm not sure how long I'm gonna talk for, but I'll be watching the clock, and I'll be sure to stop at least at 10:45 so we can just talk and share. And because others who have experienced Jukai on both sides, giving the precepts and receiving the precepts, and if anyone has questions about that process or just wants to share about their experience with that, and are willing, just holding some space for that at the end. Yeah, I first want to offer gratitude for all the effort that went into the Jukai-e out in LA. It had been being planned for several years, and our beloved Chimyo who's part of the Soto Zen Buddhist Association, was part of the planning committee, and it was a huge event. I mean, people flew out. Priests and cooks flew out from all over the world, from monasteries in Japan and South America and South Korea, all over the United States. There are a couple of us, from Asheville, from Chapel Hill, folks from the Brooklyn Zen Center, and just all over, East Coast, West Coast, North, South, East, West. It was really, it took a lot to put it together, and just for everyone to get out there. And right when we arrived, it took place the 16th to the 20th, and that first day we were checking in and kind of showing them our rakusus and if we had received the precepts before, our dharma names. And to my surprise, we got a goodie bag. I was like, and it was we got some matcha in it, some green tea, a mug, which I don't have with me, or else I'd show it. We got these participant handbooks. So we were called Kai-te. Kai-te are just participants, those receiving the precepts. And I'm just gonna show my view here so I make sure that I'm showing, that y'all can see actually what I'm showing. So we got this participant handbook. And I just want to name some folks who, there was a lot that went into it and made it happen. Participants and unseen beings and seen beings. And but I really want to acknowledge those who really took on a leadership role in the ceremony first. So the preceptor, Reverend Gengo Akiba, who's kind of the leader and who we received the precepts from. The instructing officiant, Reverend Chosen Bays, the guiding officiant, Reverend Shoken Weinkoff, and then the officiant offering teachings on the precepts, Reverend Shohaku Okumura and Reverend Tenshin Anderson Roshi. The lecturers, Reverend Konjin Godwin, Reverend Shumio Kojima, who's also the abbot of Zen Shuji, which is where the ceremonies were held. And Zen Shuji is the first established Soto Zen center in North America. And so it was established November 20th, 1922, and the Jukai-e was held November 16th to November 20th, 2022. And so it was right that last day of the Jukai-e was actually the 100th birthday of Zen Shuji. And it was also Reverend Kojima's birthday that week. Can't remember what day exactly. And so it was really we were celebrating Jukai-e, we were celebrating Soto Zen in North America, celebrating Reverend Kojima. Maybe there were others celebrating different birthdays and whatnot, but it was really, really celebratory and fun. And Teijo often talks about the playfulness in Zen, And that Dogen Zenji talked about. And I can definitely fall into this kind of limited understanding of Zen as very serious, and which it can be. And yeah, you know, you're just sitting and your face, you know, but it was really fun. It was celebratory, and there were moments of play. And at the end of the ceremony, the monks who were kind of guiding us through, you know, I was outside of the auditorium, and the way Zen Shuji is set up, it really feels like a church. And so there are pews in the hall, and there's a stage where the main ceremonies took place. And some of the monks were up on the stage, and they were literally lifting and like throwing and tossing up some of the other monks. And it was just funny to see all these priests and monks in robes and just cutting up and like having a good time. And it kind of like felt like if you've ever watched a sports event and like at the end, whatever team won, and they're like throwing up the MVP. And so like different people were being tossed in the air. It was just really exciting. Reverend Teijo Munnich gave a lecture. That was amazing. You know, this isn't probably very Zen of me, but the whole retreat, the Jukai-e, I was kind of bragging about Teijo, and I was like, oh, you know, that's my teacher. And you know, many people came up to me throughout and were like, wow, like, so you know, Teijo's amazing. You're so lucky. Y'all are so lucky there at Great Tree to have such an amazing teacher with such a depth of understanding and practice. And I was really gushing, but even though that wasn't really they weren't bragging on me at all, but I felt like they were. I was just really proud to be part of the Sangha. And so, you know, like I said, I don't know if that's proper Zen mind to have, but that's how I felt. Reverend Enkyo Ohara gave a lecture. And then the Jiki Danryo, who were the kind of leaders and planners of the ceremony and just put so much effort over several years to make this happen. And there were so many moving parts to it. And one thing that really struck me from the whole thing was just how well orchestrated it was and how well organized. And there are almost 100 of us kaite, 100 of us participants. And that's not including all the monks and priests, the senior monks and priests who served in some form of leadership role. And so there were a lot of people doing a lot of different things, needing to be in different places at different times. And it could have so easily devolved, I think, at any point into chaos. But because of the Jiki Danryo and just everyone putting so much effort and intention and attention into it, it was really seamless. I mean, there were times during some of the ceremonies where different boxes and different items and artifacts were needed to be moved around really quickly. And it was just so seamless. And it was just really impressive. So the Jiki Danryo, Reverend Ejo McMullen, who he's kind of the MC in a way. He would kind of talk us through the different ceremonies and explain them. And he lived in Japan. My understanding is he lived in Japan for a long time. So he has that understanding of Japanese, and he would do some translations, but he's a Western guy and practices at Buddha-i Temple in Eugene, Oregon. And he did a really wonderful job of just explaining everything. And everyone, him and the other Jiki Danryo and the seniors just created this like really, really amazing container that just, for me, it really allowed myself to just let go and be in the practice, you know. And I think Reverend Konjin talked about just noticing any type of resistance that comes up and just noticing it. And I definitely had that, you know. There were times where I was like, wow, this is, some of it was very esoteric and very like all of Zen, some of the ceremonies, some of the rituals can feel a little bit like unnerving for me. Like, wow, what is this that I'm entering into? And I'm not even sure of what I'm saying in these chants. But because of the container, I think, and the participants, but also the Diki Danro and the seniors just created this container of so much warmth and care, that it was like, I just felt like, oh, like they got me, I can just let go of all of that and kind of give it up and let it go and just be in the practice, and let it flow. Reverend Abun Aki Jiki Danryo, Reverend Chimyo Atkinson, Reverend Joaquin Fernandez, Reverend Koshi Kurataki, Reverend Nyose Kwang, Reverend Sempo Oshiro, Reverend Tenku Ruff, and Reverend Kenzan Seidenberg. Yes. I'll be right back. I'm gonna cut my light on. It's kind of cloudy here in Asheville, so I was like expecting the sun to come out, and it hasn't. So I'll make my own sun, turn the light on. Yeah. So a little bit, I'll just read from the Kaite handbook, there are some words from greetings from Reverend Shumyo Kojima, the abbot of Zen Shuji, and from Akiba Roshi, who is the preceptor. And I'll just share a little bit about what they said about the practice. And so here is Akiba Roshi, who is the preceptor, or in Japanese, the Kaishi. And he wrote, from the 16th to the 20th of November, 2022, Zen Shuji will be hosting the 100th anniversary of the founding of the temple. On this occasion, the ceremony of receiving the precepts will be scheduled. The ceremony has been continually performed ever since the time of the Buddha. In the Soto school, the founder Dogen Zenji received the transmission of the unbroken lineage chart successively from teacher to disciple, from his master Rujing at Tiandangshan, Jingdeishi, on the 18th of the 9th month of 1225 CE. This was recorded by Dogen in the book Buso Shoden Bosatsukai Saho, or the procedure for the true transmission of Bodhisattva Precepts of Buddhas and ancestors. Since then, in the Soto school, administering the giving and receiving of precepts has been considered a very important activity for a person entering Buddhism as a sincere member of Sangha. The significance of receiving precepts, as Dogen said in his Shobo Genzo, in the chapter entitled Jukai. In the East and West, whenever the tenets of Buddhas and ancestors are transmitted, there has always been giving and receiving the precepts at the beginning. Therefore, by partaking in the ceremony and receiving the precepts, you are entering the rank of Buddhas as their heir. For receiving the precepts, you will be instructed by the preceptor to realize their meanings and personal significance. As a proof of your receiving them, the lineage chart, Kechimyaku, will be given to you together with your new Buddhist precept name. Through Buddhist practices such as listening to Dharma lectures and partaking in the activities of chanting and meditations, you will find your body and mind will be harmonized throughout your life. As it is said, receiving precepts has an immeasurable meaning, and we urge as many people as possible to receive them. We firmly believe if people of the world, even as few as 3 or 5, would realize their own original pure minds and reach the state of Buddhahood, we would be more than satisfied. The ceremony of receiving the precepts will be a felicitous event of Zen Shuji and Soto Zen North America's 100th anniversary and adds additional significance. We hope you will participate in this occasion. So that's just kind of the background of Jukai and this particular Jukai. And then, so in my experience with Jukai too, so this was my second time receiving the precepts, and Teijo talks about, you know, can receive them as many times. And, you know, the whole ceremony for me and Jukai and just the practice and Zazen, which I really feel like the ceremonies and rituals and Jukai are all just kind of moving Zazen. It's, for me, it's like a homecoming. It's like, it feels like returning home. And, you know, Okumura Roshi talked about this in his lecture that he gave on the precepts. But the verb kie, which you chant, and that's kind of, those are the 3 refuges that are part of the 16 Bodhisattva precepts that you receive. So in Japanese, it's Namu Kie Butsu, Namu Kie Ho, Namu Kie So. I take refuge in Buddha, I take refuge in Dharma, I take refuge in Sangha. But that verb kie is to return home. And that's really what it felt like. I mean, the whole ceremony, returning home to self, returning home to community, or to returning home to like universal truth. And then also returning home to really what felt like the roots of our practice, the roots of Soto Zen. You know, because so much effort was put into it. And my understanding is that some of the ceremonies, the way they were done, are not often done in the US or in North America. And so to have that and have these monks who were trained in that and brought over to the US really felt like, oh, like going back to the roots, returning like home to the kind of the original Japanese Zen. And you know what I think is so cool about Zen and just Buddhism, many things, but one of the things is how Buddhism, as it started in China and then spread throughout the world, it really it merges with the culture of that land and the culture of the people there, and becomes, it's still Buddhism, but it becomes it's a new form of Buddhism. And so just like how it got to Japan and became Zen and other traditions as well, and then came over to the US, it's like, you know, it's merges with our Western culture and becomes this kind of new form of Zen, which I think is really awesome. And I think speaks to one of the beautiful things about the practice is like the fluidity of the structure, and how it can feel very structured, but it also is loose enough to be malleable. And so it was cool to get back and kind of get that original feel that came through in the ceremonies and the chanting and the singing and all the rituals. And one thing, I think one way it manifested in the Jukai-e is we would practice this thing called Jundo, which is a way of lining up. And so it was because we received these Kechimyaku, which the lineage papers, which once you receive the precepts, you know, it's a line and they tell you not to open it up. And so there's a paper in here that has a red line going back from the Buddha all the way to the preceptor and then to the receiver of the precepts. It's really hard to get back in, apparently, once you unfold it. But if you Google Kechimyaku, you can see some online. I can type it in the chat too for spelling. But the Jundo is meant to resemble and represent that Kechimyaku, that bloodline. And so the way we would line up is by number. And it was really important that we were in order, because we were given a name, a Dharma name. And it was important that you got the right name. And if one person was off, then everyone else would get the wrong name and get the wrong Kechimyaku. And so it could have really easily, I thought, I heard that, I was like, oh, well, how am I gonna do this? And they did, and it was really seamless, as far as I know. Seems seamless from my end, from my perspective. And we would line up and we would circle the ceremonial hall. And the way it was set up is at one point, the first person of the line and the last person would come together and form this perfect circle of just representing the continuous flow of the precepts and the practice, and how it just flows from generation to generation, I think. And so we were doing the Jundo and we would practice it, and just the way the whole ceremonies were done too, we got introduced to a lot of stuff, but like the way it was done was very like, we're going to introduce this to you like the Jundo, and then we're going to build on it and build on it. And so what could have been really easily overwhelming was introduced in such a way that was doable and manageable. And so we did the Jundo, and we would do a call and response. And so the person at the head of the line, one of the head monks, would chant. He would kind of chant homage to the Buddhas of the 3 times, and then we would respond. But then as we were moving, and we would do this Jundo as we went to the cafeteria and did lunch, and we would do a formal kind of oryoki, it's called, style of eating in the Zen tradition. And when I was towards the back of the line, and it became really hard to hear the first person who would do the call, and then we would respond. And so it became this jumbled kind of thing. And then also there are some folks who are struggling to get up and down. We had to go up and down stairs. And so there would, it'd be it was just hard for them. And so took this really rigid Jundo. And then the next day we came back, and the MC, Reverend Teijo, would kind of adapt it and would say, okay, well, we're all just going to chant the chant all together. We'll not do the call and response. And then if there are folks who, well, my dog just walked in and took a sip of my water, so I won't be drinking that anymore. I guess you can just have it now at this point. And so you notice that, okay, there are people who are struggling to get up and down the steps, so let's adapt the Jundo. And so it's this practice of continuously learning and evolving and taking this structure, but not being so attached to it, whereas it created more hardships for people, but actually allowing the structure to support the practice and to support everyone. So that was really beautiful to be a part of. Wow, there's a lot I want to say. I'm like looking at my notes and like at the first part. So we had a very structured day, and so we would start, and we would start at Zen Shuji around 7:30, and you could eat breakfast and have some tea, and then they'd call you up to the ceremonial hall to start doing the practices, and around 8:30, and from there on it'd be kind of ceremony after ceremony, and we'd eat lunch around noon, and then ceremonies till the end of the day, which typically ended between 6 and 8 for the kaite, for the participants. I know Teijo and some of the other leaders sometimes were there, I think, till like 10 or maybe even beyond, practicing the ceremonies for the next day. So they were really long days. And I stayed at the Zen Center of LA, which is in, it's kind of near Koreatown. So Zen Shuji is in Little Tokyo. And so I actually got really lucky and got the last spot. There were some folks from Brooklyn Zen Center also staying at Zen Center. So it was about a 20-25 minute drive from Zen Center to Zen Shuji. And they offered me the last spot in their car. And so I rode with them each day and made some friends. And I was in a dorm, very college style. There were 2 twin beds. And my roommate is also from from Ancestral Heart, which is Brooklyn Zen Center's residential practice center up in New York. And so it was really cool to just hang out and talk with them and talk about the practice. And we kind of would have, I felt like a little kid, having a slumber party and having these big, exciting days. And at the end,
no, you should be. Remember, you did it right in that right now. You saw where it said. Yeah.
and I'm muted. I think I got booted for a second. Yeah, but well, okay. So I had someone to kind of process the day with, and we would kind of be in bed and just like talking about the experience. And it was just as great. The whole thing just was like a big like Sangha party in a way, with like all these different practitioners, all different levels coming together and just practicing and sharing and eating lunch together and hanging out in between rituals and ceremonies. And yeah, it was just a great way to connect. And it was very intergenerational, folks of all different ages and all different practice, from like little kids. We'd hear little kids laughing in the background to all the way up and down. So it's very intergenerational. And people were just very welcoming and willing to share and open to questions and sharing stories. Got to meet several of Teijo's Dharma siblings, and yeah, it was just a great kind of coming together. So yeah, it was full days. And one thing that really struck me and that was really powerful for me was just the intentionality and the practices and the ritual nature of them, and the chanting and the lots of drumming and bells. And I have some pictures that I'll share. It was very intentional about inviting in the ancestors, both living and dead, to come support us in the practice. And you really felt that, and there'd be different ceremonies with different bells and drums. And one of them, inviting in the ancestors and sending them away, was kind of this sequence of, it would be a bell, a drum, and the cymbals. And it started out really slow, and it would be like ding, boom, and then the cymbals even slower than that. And then it gradually got faster and faster. And it really felt like, even though nobody seen was moving, it really felt like inviting this procession of unseen beings into the space. And I really felt it, and it was really powerful. And we also did the style of Zen singing called Baika-ryu-e Sanka. It was really beautiful, and the way I guess it's traditionally done is you have kind of the leader, and he sings the first little verse, and then everybody joins. And I was fortunate too. I sat next to someone. They were two away from me, and they were a member of Zen Shuji, and they're part of the Baika group. And so they've been practicing this for a long time. And so I was following with them, and they just harmonized so beautifully. And, I felt a little self-conscious at first singing, and Reverend Teijo, the MC, he said something at the beginning, just kind of in passing, and was like, don't feel like you need to sound good or anything. And And he said was the key to harmonizing is to first be out of harmony, because it's only by being out of harmony that you can then get into harmony. And that really stuck with me. And I thought, oh yeah, that makes sense for the singing, but also for life and with practice, you know, of just, it's okay to be out of harmony. And actually that's how we then, noticing that, can then harmonize. And I do have the video, but I think I'll just put it in the chat, or maybe if there's time we can, I'll share it. But as we were singing, and it took me probably a couple days to notice it, really. But as we were singing, the senior monks and priests would actually come onto the stage and get in their rows very slowly. And so it was almost as if we were singing them onto the stage. And it was just a great way, I think, to harmonize. And it was a really powerful image to just be supporting, and how everyone kind of had their role to play. And we were all kind of coming together to make this event and these ceremonies happen. Yeah, I'm kind of all over the place, but once again, that's how my head kind of works. And so there are lectures on the precepts by Reverend Okumura Roshi and Reverend Tenshin Anderson. And, you know, I won't go super deep into it. I took a lot of notes, but I'll share a couple of things that stuck out to me from them. And at one point, Okumura Roshi talked about the three poisons, often translated as anger, ignorance, and greed. And he talked about how those are important, and how those are not to be avoided, but actually welcomed into the practice, and how they actually have benefits. And so Reverend Konjin talked about this as well, talking about how it's all transformable. And so, you know, I think about it, and then what they talked about is like, without anger, there would be no, for example, like social justice work, right? Because oftentimes it's the anger that brings us to that. And I think even about my own practice, like my anger is really informative, and sometimes actually encourages me to practice, because it's noticing a lot of times that's like, okay, something's not quite right here. Either I need to change, or something external needs to change. But it's inviting that in and allowing it to teach us. And the way that Tenshin Roshi talked about it in his talk is getting really curious about the practice, and getting really investigative about everything, and studying all things, including the anger, including the ignorance, including the greed. And Reverend Konjin talked about, well, greed can be beneficial, as it's like almost like being greedy to do more good in the world. And so actually getting greedy about that. And then the ignorance can be transformed into clarity and curiosity. And then Tenshin Roshi talked about, and as part of the precepts, there are the 10 grave precepts, things like not killing, not stealing, not using intoxicants, or misusing sexuality. And what Tenshin Roshi said is, it's about non-discrimination, that we study everything. And he said the precepts and the breaking of the precepts are a call for great compassion. And that really struck me. It's like, you break the precepts, well, you still, the answer, I guess, is compassion, and you adhere to the precepts, and it's compassion. And we did a lot of intentional chanting. One of the ancestors was Avalokiteshvara, and she is the Bodhisattva of compassion. And, you know, we really felt that energy in the Sangha. Just think inviting that in, you know, externally and internally. Tenshin Roshi talked about the precepts as planting seeds. So not turning away from the mud, but planting seeds in the mud. And he said that awakening lives in delusion, and that Zazen is looking at delusion. And then each of the lecturers, so Teijo included, talked about the different paramitas, or the different perfections. And so there's the lecturing that would happen, and the ceremonies and the rituals, like bringing in the lecturers and then sending them away. The whole thing was very ceremonial. And it felt like, if you've ever done a sesshin or a retreat, the first couple of days in my experience are usually pretty rough. Even like I have a headache. Just like, it's hard, and I'm just like, thinking about how I can get out of this. And it was kind of similar in the Jukai-e. Then like by about day 2 or 3, the end of day 2, day 3, it's like just kind of let go and just ease into it. And you allow it to kind of hold you, and allow everyone to hold you and guide you. And just having that shared intention was really felt. One of the most powerful experiences for me too. So each day, they called in folks in the different kind of major lineages of the folks who brought Zen over to North America. So Shunryu Suzuki Roshi, Katagiri Roshi, Mayazumi Roshi. And each day they would call folks in the lineages and would offer incense. And then one person, a senior monk, was chosen to kind of serve, almost be like the seat of honor, and kind of walk through the lunch line as we were eating, and just kind of be esteemed in that way. And so we went up for Katagiri Roshi, and we were all gathered, and we were not me, I was kind of there and just part of it, but folks were deciding who should be kind of in the seat of honor. Pointed at someone, like a senior monk, a male guy. And I hope it's okay that I'm telling the story, Teijo, I won't go into details. But Teijo was like, well, hold on, everyone, like basically like, this woman is actually the senior here, like she should be the one in the seat of honor. And so just that advocacy in that space was really meaningful to be a part of and to witness. And then obviously, we're here at Great Tree Zen Women's Temple. And so that in and of itself is really powerful in such a patriarchal lineage that can discredit or diminish the practices of women. That is huge. And my understanding too is that some of the Jiki Danro, particularly Reverend Tenku, Chimyo, really busted tooth and nail to ensure that women held leadership roles in the ceremonies. So Reverend Chosen Bays, she was one of the main 3. There's like the preceptor Akiba Roshi, and the instructing officiant, and the other officiant, and Reverend Shoken was one of them, and Reverend Chosen. And my understanding is that was the first time a woman had served in that capacity in this type of ceremony. And I kind of saw this Jukai-e too as like a celebration of the 100 years of Soto Zen in North America, and also paving the way for the next 100 years. And that's one of the things that struck out for me, is like more representation, more leadership, and more bringing to the center those who have historically existed on the margins. And at one point, so at the end, one of the last ceremonies, we're right a minute from 10:45, so it's the last thing I'll say. One of the last things we did was like a traditional kind of question and answer. And so Akiba Roshi is up on this stage, on top of the stage, and you can kind of come up and get in a line and you shout this question at Akiba Roshi, and then you bow as he gives the answer, and he would say it in Japanese and his translator would translate. And at one point, one of a female practitioner came up, and I can't remember her question exactly, but was essentially like, how can we be equals if you're way up on that platform and I'm down here, and alluding to like men above, women below. And he actually invited her onto the platform with him, and she was just up there, and they had a little exchange, and it was just, I think it was important to see. And for me, that is really invigorating for me, and something that I really hope that I bring I hope that I can bring to this practice, is just that that equity piece and that social justice piece, because like going back to how one of the beautiful things about Buddhism and Zen, it adapts and merges with the culture. Like, we're in the West and other places, but in the West too, here where we are, we're in a very hierarchical, patriarchal, racist society, and Zen, I think Zen unfortunately can merge with that piece too. And so I think, just like with anywhere else, we have to be intentional about naming it and calling it out. And I feel like this ceremony, there was that spirit there, I felt personally. And there's that spirit here at Great Tree too, because I mean, it's in and of itself, it's in the name, and that's really important. There were a lot of other things I wanted to say and talk about, but here we are, and I really want to stop talking and just open up the floor if there are any questions or comments or thoughts.
I would like to thank you, Trey, for bringing this spirit of enthusiasm and newness. It's very exciting. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
You didn't mention that you asked a question, shouted a question yourself. I was so glad to see you do that. I mean, I wasn't there. I was just watching on Zoom. That was right on.
Thank you. Yeah, I was really scared. I was so nervous. My heart was racing so much that I went up to hear the answer. I just blacked out. I didn't hear any of it. I had to ask people after, like, what did he say?
Believe that.
Yeah, that's cool that you joined on Zoom. I'm glad. Yeah.
I also wanted to ask you if, like, in what ways was receiving the precepts at Great Tree different or similar from doing it out there?
Yeah, that's a good question. It was similar. I mean, the Jukai, it was the same kind of form. At the Jukai in LA is a much bigger, there's a lot more people. There's a lot more people, a lot more participants, and a lot more folks leading the practice. And there wasn't a lot of zazen, so we would sit for maybe 10 or 15 minutes each morning, but there was just so many ceremonies and rituals to get through. Whereas, the Jukai at the Great Tree, we do sesshin, so we sit for a few days in a kind of traditional Great Tree sesshin, and then the ceremony is held on the last day.
So did those differences put you in a different place somehow? to receive the precepts?
I think so. When I did it at Jukai, or when I did it at Great Tree, we were outside because it was still in the peak of the pandemic, and it was much smaller. It felt, I was going to say intimate, but that's not the right word, because it felt very intimate at Zen Shuji as well. But, you know, I was much more, I was in an environment I wasn't as accustomed to, and with people I didn't know as well. And I think what I really felt at Zen Shuji that was a little bit different, and I think this is just not so much talking about the Jukai themselves, but just the place that I was in, is I was much more open to receiving that kind of, almost like the spirit in a way, or like the unseen kind of irrational component, you know, of just inviting in the ancestors and just really feeling that spirit of it, and feeling the history, and feeling the lineage, and feeling all who came before and all who will come after and all who are here now. I really felt that at Zen Shuji in a different kind of way. It's also when I did Jukai at Great Tree, it was my first time doing it too, so I was a little bit like, "Oh, what is happening? What am I doing?" But having done it before, then at Zen Shuji, I think I was just able to let go a little bit more, and allow myself to receive more. You know, because I struggle with really opening up in that way and just allowing the receiving, and then getting out of my thinking mind. Because I think that's another thing as a Westerner, having been raised and socialized in the West, very rational, intellectual kind of world. But the ceremonies really broke through that, and like it was just very in the body. It was very visceral, you know. And I mean, Teijo talks about that too. I mean, the body practice and the importance of including the body. But I think that there were just so many ceremonies and rituals that it was just like boom, 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 boom. You know, it really kind of had to let go almost in a way. Yeah.
Thank you. I was thinking about this idea of seamlessness that you brought up a couple times, you know, that it felt very seamless, and being, you know, on the other side, I experienced the chaos that was constantly going on.
Right.
And it just, and I thought, how could he have possibly experienced it as seamless when it was so crazy, you know? But I think, you know, just when we all went in there and just did it, there was just this effort coming from everyone. And I think that's why it felt seamless, because the effort was seamless.
Mm-hmm.
Or something. I don't know how to express it, but because it did feel seamless in a sense. Although every time we weren't on stage, you know, it was like, what the hell are we doing? What do we do next? You know, so it's a little interesting that was so much your experience.
Yeah, I know it's hard to express. Me too, but yeah, it was. I mean, yeah, and I think that just, to me, I mean, I'm really floored by the effort that went into it, because I hear you talk about it and others, and it's like, wow, really? Like it was that chaotic? Because yeah, for me it was like, wow, you know, all the bells and are on point and everything, and we just kind of flow into it. You know. Yeah.
Hi, it's so good to see everyone and hear about the ceremony again. I feel like I'm right back there. Thanks, Trey. Couple of things you mentioned stood out to me, especially about the playfulness of it, because I mean, not just the playfulness in Zen, and I think that can be I don't know, overlooked or not necessarily recognized, because it can seem from the exterior like Zen is very strict and like sort of morose, you know. I actually heard some people at Zen Mountain Monastery describing it that way, and I was like, oh, I've never heard anyone describe Zen that way, but I was like, I can see that. But it was that the playfulness for me, like, kind of came through, you know, like you were talking about how everything was so seamless and organized, but it wasn't like, oh my God, if somebody makes a mistake, it's like, you know, this horrible thing and you're going to get like punished or something. I mean, it was just like, oh, you know, we're all here together doing the best we can, recognizing that you know, especially in a ceremony that big, there are going to be mistakes. Are going to be times of chaos. And, you know, like Teijo has mentioned, or Kaoverii Roshi has mentioned in his writings, you just like stand up straight and keep going, you know, because you just, you know, you just, that's what you have to do. And not get all like, you know, your ego all like, oh no, I made a mistake. Because then if you do that, you're going to make another mistake. You know, you're going to be stuck back in that moment where you made the mistake, instead of being in, you know, letting go of it and then letting the Sangha like carry you forward. Okay, you know, like, oops, I forgot to bow. Like, oh, everyone else is bowing. Okay, I'm going to bow. And then it just kind of makes it more, it makes it, for me, I felt like it was more of a flow, and it was more fun. I wasn't taking myself or all of it too seriously. I was taking it seriously because it was an important, you know, ritual and ceremony, but I wasn't taking it too seriously. And I guess that's kind of like that middle way, you know, finding that middle way. But anyway, it was really great to hear you speak and see you again. And it was just such an amazing, powerful ceremony. I was grateful to be there.
Yeah, thank you. It's good to see you too. Yeah, Brooke and I traveled there together, so we were on the same flight there and back. And watched some movies, shared some podcasts, talked. But yeah, you know, I resonate with that a lot. You know, of just that that spirit of playfulness. And you know, people didn't. I messed up, and even some of the people leading chants would sometimes say the wrong chant, and you know, it was just, we kind of like laugh and just kind of keep it moving. You know, and it was not in a flippant sort of way, but it was just in a like, so it's life, you know, you just keep going. And it was really great Sangha practice, you know, just because I wouldn't know when to bow, or if I was I would be singing the wrong lyric, and then, you know, notice like, oh, everyone around me is singing something else. So it was really, it helped with that letting go. It was like, I don't need to know everything or do everything perfectly, because the Sangha's got my back, you know.
Yeah, you know, you reminded me that the thing, there were 12 of us up there on the altar that were kind of, I don't know exactly what we were doing. We were doing the ceremonies, but what you were saying made me think about how what we finally realized as a group, because these ceremonies were all different, and some people knew them a little better than others, and we were all trying to coordinate. What we finally realized is that it really wasn't so important that we got everything right, but just that we were all doing the same thing.
Are you talking about when you were fanning the sutras, Teijo?
No.
How about doing all those bows?
Oh yeah.
Right. When to bow, which way to be facing. I mean, all of that stuff, it changed for every ceremony. And finally, we just realized that if we were all doing the same thing, that was the most important thing. It wasn't so important that we did it according to the book, you know?
Right.
And that was incredible that you volunteered to do that many bows.
Well, we didn't exactly volunteer. We were given that stuff.
Well, You did them.
Actually, I was telling my physical therapist that like those 45 bows that we had to do for that one ceremony. I think that all that bowing actually helped my hip. Because my body was in pretty good shape after all of that. You know, I've always thought of these prostrations as physical, physical movement. So it's sort of like the sun salutation, 45 times in a row.
Yeah.
But it was really nice to see Great Tree represented by you up on the altar by the back of Brooke's head, which is where the camera was. I saw you and I went, oh, there's Brooke. Where is Trey? And it took me forever to ever get to see Trey walking by the camera. But anyway, I did finally. And then you asked that question. So it felt like Great Tree was very well connected into all that was going on. And of course, Teijo's talk.
Yes.
I didn't know the camera was behind my head. Oh no.
A couple rows back, but there you were. I went,
Oh
"That's
wow.
Brooke's head.
Okay.
I'm sure it is." And then when you
Great.
did profile, I was positive,
Oh.
It's good
Yeah,
you-
I want to say thank you to Trey. It's already 11 o'clock, so I think we should probably sign off. Do we have any announcements? Lorna seems to come. Who's speaking next week? Ben Connolly from Minnesota Zen Center. He's currently, his teacher is Tim Burkett, who courageously took over Minnesota Zen Center and has done some really interesting things there. So I encourage you all to come. Anything else we need to say?
I just say thank you for having me and letting me talk and ramble on. Yeah. If you
Thank
ever,
you. So
yeah.
great. I think I'm going to ask you to give the rest of the talk that you didn't give again.
Sure. Yeah, I have pictures actually this time. Yeah.
Oh, okay, so be prepared, maybe March. And Brooke is just getting over COVID, so I've let her off the hook, but we did talk about having her talk about her experience, so thank you. May the merit of this practice
May the merit of this practice
benefit all beings
benefit all beings
and bring peace.
and bring peace.
Hi, Lorna. How are you? Oh, you're mute. You're muted.
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah. Getting ready to start another semester of craziness on Monday.
Good.
Yeah.
Keep you going.
Yeah. Did you record the talk this morning?
I think Trey did. That it was.
Oh, Trey did. Okay.
Because I was getting ready to do it, and all of a sudden, a little thing popped up on the screen. So it
Yeah.
was recorded. Yes.
I'm on my phone this morning, but I'll try to. I missed the beginning of his talk. I'll try to see if when it posts online. But I'll be available to jump in on Saturdays and record beginning next week. And if and Trey and I had been alternating on the Donna statement, so I'll catch up with him and just kind of see who's going next week, and we'll take it from there.
Okay.
And are you introducing the speakers?
Yeah, I've been just filling in whoever wasn't there.
Yeah. Teijo wanted, I think she wanted us to have some meeting, like all of us, you and I and Ann and Trey at some point in the next couple of weeks. So I'll see what she wants to do about that. Get back to you. Yeah. How are things going?
Things are going fairly well. We've had a few little hiccups here and there, like dead battery in the car and no other car.
Uh-oh.
So has been ferrying us back and forth to the auto store because the
Okay.
battery started the car once, but it didn't start the battery the second time. So we had to go get a new battery, and little things like that have popped up.
Yes. Like the new year is like raising those things up already.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that gets worked out. Yeah. And we'll is the town is Weaverville? Is it Weaverville where
Yeah.
the store is? Yeah.
Yeah, that's our closest.
Yeah.
civilization.
Yeah. And that's if you had to do it on foot, that's a hike. So
But yeah,
it's good to
and
have.
it's so cool being so close to the temple. I mean, because like I say, from my back and her back porch, we can hear the river and the train.
Oh wow, that's cool. I didn't know.
Uh,
I knew it was close. I didn't know it was that close. Yeah.
The problem is that you have to go from hers down this wiggly road to the river to get to the bridge to go up my wiggly road to get to me. So it takes like or something, but
Yeah.
yell and holler and throw things.
Yeah.
As the crow flies.
Yeah.
But
I know I know how that terrain is laid out. So yeah, spent a lot of time up. Yeah. Well, it's it's good to see you, and I'll see you again soon.
Good. We missed you.
I know I kind of for a couple of weeks dropped off the radar. I honestly feel like my semester didn't end because I started a new place, and they had this one of those a public school, and has state supervision, and they have like student financial aid things. So there's like a high level of stuff they want you to do and report back on, and I was just getting started, so I was new, and I was doing that and designing classes for the next semester, and this next semester is just starting. So I kind of feel like the semester never ended, but it's getting to a place where I can come back in and like do things that I just like. It was just crowded out. So, but I'm back.
Yeah, I was thinking this morning, if you didn't show up this morning, I was going to contact you to make sure you
Oh,
still.
thank you. Well, I'm glad to know that because I know I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And I would do the same thing. So people who I'm friends with in regular contact with, if I don't see them, I start to wonder, and then I reach out. So thank you. So I'll see you soon.
Okay.
See you next week. Okay. I will half bow because I'm on my phone, but thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Come here. Goodbye. Goodbye.